LinkedIn Local. We're about to start round 2. Take a look, enjoy, ask questions, comment below, let us know what you think, all right? The topic is transitions, moving forward in your career or your business. All right, I'll see you soon.
All right, folks, let's take your seats. We're going to start our panel in just a moment.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're about to start. Please come in, grab a seat. Grab a seat. Yes. Okay. All right, everybody. Hi, my name is Bobby Umar, and sorry I was. Hey, how are you? Good to see you. Sorry I was late today. I had another thing I had to do, and I came right here right away. I missed a little bit. I'm so sorry, but I will be here the rest of the evening if you guys want to talk to me. And I want to thank Nick for taking over the beginning there because I wasn't around. So thank you so much for that job. He probably told you all about DYPB and things like that, but I want to talk about a couple things. So one is, again, if you haven't had a chance to check out QStone and what they're doing back there, it's really amazing. Make sure you check them out. We also have my friend Yusuf is doing some really cool photography and doing headshots and offering some special deals for people. Make sure you go see him. And also, you know, on your LinkedIn app, you can actually create connections for yourself. You can go to the app and say, see who's here. You can see everyone who's active, and you can add people on LinkedIn right away. It's on your app, so make sure you're doing that because no one's doing that.
You go into your connections and then hit find friends.
Right. So so you click the connection button at the bottom, and then you click find friends, and you should be able to see people who have activated that. So it's a great way to connect.
Location finder's got to be on.
Yeah, but you got to put your location finder. Yeah. Next time we'll take you through an entire walkthrough. And I'll do it on a chalkboard for you. It'll be fantastic. Yeah, it's a workshop. You know, the other thing I want to mention is I want to share briefly my story of transition. Okay, so I did engineering because my dad said, you know, Bobby, do math and English, and you know, doctor, lawyer, engineer, that's the way to go, right? And so I did that. And so I did engineering because I thought I liked math and physics, which I did, but I wasn't that passionate about it. And so while I was working as an engineer at Bombardier, I was bored, so I started my own musical theater company. So I started producing and directing musicals and grew this organization from 2 people to 150 people in about 4 years. And that was my passion throughout the entire evenings and weekends when I came home from work. And eventually I was like, you know what, this is kind of interesting, let me transition. And one of the things that I've learned about transition is I suck at it. So after I left my university degree, it took me 8 months to find a job, and I can tell you that 4 or 5 months of it, I just spent playing video games, watching television, and it was kind of a dark period. I don't even remember. I must have watched like 8 to 10 hours of TV per day. And my mom and dad were like, what the hell is wrong with you? Sorry, what the hell is wrong with you? And I never thought about it too much. So then after I worked at Bombardier, and then I left engineering, again, it took me another year and 4 months to figure out what to do next. I finally started my MBA, and then did that. And after I finished my MBA, again, MBA was amazing because I was top of my class, co-valedictorian, straight A's, right? It was amazing. And then I didn't have a job. And all my friends were working, and I didn't have a job. So then it took me, after my MBA, and where I thought I was a rock star, 8 months before I got another job. So clearly there's a trend here that I struggle with transition. And so when I finally left the corporate world, after 4 years of brand marketing, I was like, okay, I really need to get my butt into gear. And of course, it took me way too long to get my butt into gear. It took me about 6 months, which was short for me to figure that out. But now I realize that, you know, transition is tough. Transition is hard, and part of it's because we don't take the time to really understand what is it we really want, or we want to rush to the next thing, or we want to get that job, or we want to make money, whatever it is. There's pressure everywhere. And for me, it was always a big challenge. But what I finally did is, in those 6 months, I dove into my personal brand. I understood my values. I created more alignment around what I want to do. I created more focus and clarity and direction on the type of work I want to do, which was speaking and coaching. I created more impact and success and results and legacy around what I'm doing. And I've been doing that now for 14 years, and I haven't looked back. So if you take the time to invest in your brand, you will get that focus, you will get that alignment, you will get that impact. But you got to do the work. It's a lot of work, but you did. And that's why DYPB is here, and that's why I'm here, and that's why we're all trying to do what we're trying to do. So I thought I'd share a quick story of transition. It's been 20 years, of which 4.5 years was spent in transition. It took a while to get where I am, but now I'm very happy where I am. So anyway, thank you for that. All right. going to start off with our amazing panel, and I'm just excited because first off, I know everybody, so that's kind of cool. I have a personal relationship with every single one of these people on stage, and so I'm super delighted to have them share their stories and their insights. Panels are great because you get insight, but when you do the questions, man, like they can, the nuggets will show up, and they're so awesome at it. So I'm really delighted to see this. I will leave you in the hands of your wonderful moderator. And by the way, we are on LinkedIn Live right now. If you want to say hello to people, say hello to the camera over there. Say hello, hi, yeah, good. And if you want to post about this event, you can do LinkedIn Local TO, hashtag LinkedIn Local TO, or hashtag LinkedIn Local. Those are the trending ones. And be sure to tag DYPB TO. All right? I'll leave it in wonderful Nick's hands. Here you go, Nick. Good luck. Good job.
All right, everybody. You might remember me from such things as the first half. So I have the pleasure, the luxury of being able to be the moderator for these fine folks up here, which I'm going to introduce in just a moment. But this is kind of a more casual opportunity to talk about transition, and you guys are going to have an opportunity to ask some questions as well, as I said. So I'm going to go through a kind of a first round of questions with the folks here up here. And then at that point, both online and live here, please throw your hand up and ask some great questions. Otherwise, I'm going to have to dig into my other questions that I prepared for these folks that they don't know about. I prepared them, that's fine. But otherwise, I think it's going to be a really good opportunity for you to learn. There's a lot of similar trends that I heard in conversations here during the half and beforehand that these folks have gone through or even are going through. So I'm really looking forward to this fun panel. So without further ado, our first panelist, to my right, my immediate right, is Katrina McKay. Katrina is the founder and CEO of Uplevel Solutions, a virtual assistant services company with a social mission. The company currently consists of 50 people and is growing quickly to fulfill the needs of entrepreneurs and businesses around the world while creating sustainable employment for women and LGBTQ plus individuals in the Philippines and Haiti. Katrina made the move from a traditional 9-to-5, or 9-to-9 as she liked to call it, over 5 years ago, and is passionate about all things entrepreneurship related. Katrina. There you go. That was your cue, guys. Next time. All right. Our next panelist is Julia Baxter. Julia is a pro brand instigator and business strategy coach. She's the creator of Brand Studio, the online community and learning programs where entrepreneurs create powerful personal brands that make a resounding impact. Think you couldn't create something even more amazing from your talent, skill, or gift? So did an Olympian gold medalist, speaker, psychologist, ghostwriter, life coaches, musicians, teachers, and even an hypnotist. Through working with Julia, they became recognized, profitable authorities in their spaces, adding multiple streams of income with more time and less effort. Toronto is Julia's home base through half the year. She's operating with Wi-Fi and a laptop from all over the world, and she can show you how to do it too. Julia. Awesome. All right, our third panelist to my right is Bob Minas. Bob discovered entrepreneurship out of necessity, but quickly fell in love with the creativity and freedom required to start and run his own business. After launching various business ventures, Bob set his sights on helping the next wave of entrepreneurs take ideas and launch them into full-fledged businesses. To date, Bob has helped over 500 entrepreneurs through one-on-one coaching, workshops, and speaking engagements. When he's not coaching entrepreneurs, Bob can be found supporting initiatives and projects around mental health, such as 2018's TEDx Newmarket, centering on his yoga mat and enjoying life as a father of 3. Bob.
Nick, you forgot to add that I also share a closet with Bobby Umar.
Oh.
Yeah.
No, I don't think we quite have enough time for that one.
Jeez. Good golly.
That's why Bobby and Bob over here Bobby couldn't get here in the first half of the show, mostly because they can't be in the same room at the same time because they're basically the same people.
Time travel.
Yeah, exactly. All right. All right, our final panelist on the very end here is Ryan Cuolo. Ryan was an aerospace engineer that had successfully transitioned into professional speaker, MC, and coach. Evolving his identity was something he loved doing as he grew from his experiences. Life was very good. However, what he didn't plan for was a transition that was forced upon him. After a year and a half of facing bipolar tendencies, severe anxiety, and uncontrollable depression, he finally admitted to himself and others that he was suffering from mental health issues. The unexpected turn of events drastically changed the course of his life and opened his eyes into the true meaning of what it means to transition in one's life. Thanks very much, Ryan. And Ryan! So as you can see, I'm pretty excited about these fantastic folks up here. And what we're going to do to get started, you obviously got a little bit of a bio that I read out verbatim to you guys just a moment ago. But I'm going to get each of them to talk very briefly about their transition story specifically. Okay, so that'll kind of set the stage for why they are contributing to the conversation tonight. And without further ado, I'll start with Katrina. And perfect. That's even better. Fantastic.
We'll do a pass it on sort of situation?
Yeah, that's what we'll do.
That sounds like an afterwards sort of conversation, doesn't it? So I'll actually go back and forth on the timeline a little bit because I think it will give you a little bit more context and give you some idea of the transitions that I faced in my life. I started out not in entrepreneurship, and where I am now, I'm the CEO and founder of a company. It's growing really quickly. We're in scale-up mode. That is an exciting place to be, and also that's a transition for entrepreneurs too, is to go from startup mode to scale-up mode. In startup mode, you go around being like, yes, that's a great idea, yes, let's try it. And in scale-up mode, you go, no to all the good ideas, we're gonna stay in our fucking lane. So that's a transition in and of itself, and I have to say that lots of discomfort comes with that. So to Carol's point about when you look at people that you feel like have it all together and know what's going on, they're probably facing some sort of transition too, right? Which is quite uncomfortable. I sort of stumbled into a marketing career. I don't have an MBA, I don't have a business degree. My degree is in philosophy and French lit, so that's super applicable. Turns out it kind of is anyway. And so I stumbled into marketing by accident because basically I needed a job and I could write, and I was a good critical thinker. And so I'd love to tell you that what I was doing was strategic early on, but I was kind of just bumbling my way through things. And I think when people like to tell their history, they like to give this kind of thread that runs through everything. But that would be fiction on my part. So I bumbled my way through things, worked at various companies in marketing positions, and kept being given more responsibility, largely because I was cheap and bright, right? And I was the one that put up my hand and was like, sure, I can write some marketing copy for a transfer pricing conference. I don't know what transfer pricing is, but I'm sure I'll figure it out. And then through different progressive roles, I loved what I was doing. I got to this great director level role at a major organization. I ran a marketing team, and I kind of found that I was miserable. I hit this point where I was like, what's happening to me? Like, I have the office everybody wants, I could pick my own team, and then I found, well, actually, what I really was at these other companies was technically an intrapreneur. So I went through a really tough transition where everybody around me was like, are you crazy? You're gonna leave this job where you're up for a promotion for something that's unproven? And so then I started in e-commerce, and I was doing some consulting. And again, when I speak and I do keynotes and stuff, I've got this really great bio that makes me sound like I really was making great decisions along the way. I think I've only been making really great decisions for the past couple of years. Like, I think I was just like kind of faking it and sort of making it happen along the way, and other people editorialized that. So if any of you are feeling that way, like, wow, all these people have these great bios and they like know what's going on, yeah, that's like an interesting, that's another sort of form of highlight reel. So that brings me today. I basically bumbled through a bunch of stuff, was pretty talented at certain things, found my passion basically by doing a bunch of stuff where everybody was proud of me and I didn't give a shit. And then actually took the leap and said, I am leaving this very secure, very impressive position to do something that feels much more like me. I went from e-commerce, I started some businesses there, and then now I've founded a social enterprise, and that's what gets me out of bed every morning. So that's me.
I'm Julia, and I resonate a lot with a lot of that. I stumbled into marketing years ago, 20 years ago, I hate to say. Stumbled into it, and I was cheap and bright. I'm not cheap anymore, but hopefully we're still bright. When I stumbled into marketing was when I realized how much I love something I knew nothing about. Have you ever felt that way? That you're in a position that you stumbled into, but did you really? Did you really stumble into it? Or was it something inside you that led you there anyway? That's what marketing was for me. So for the next 15 years, I worked for major corporations, worked for some of the biggest brands in the world, marketing, media, advertising, promotion, got some cool travel out of it, met the celebrities, did all of that stuff. And when I went agency side, I was there maybe 2 years and I got downsized out. That happens a lot. I cried when they let me go or whatever, I cried. But the truth is I already had one foot out the door. I already knew that I was next, so I think I've called that into being in some way. I knew that I was next and I knew that I had to do something different. And I'd already started dipping my toe in entrepreneurship and I didn't have a clue. I had no idea. So when I was let go, I did what most of us do, and I went on more interviews. And it was somewhere around, it was an executive VP position for a company you would know. And interview number 5, the headhunter called me again and said, we're still not sure if you're a fit. I met everybody and their dog, and the Prego girl that I was replacing. Like, I met everybody. And they said, we don't know if you're a fit. And I said, I know I'm not. Take me off the list, I'm done. I had no savings, I had no idea what I was gonna do next, but I was done letting someone else determine my value. I hear a lot of nodding, see a lot of nodding. So it was a transition from then to what I do now, and that, I did a few things in between, and the truth is I had corporate clients. That was just easy to get corporate clients to do the same thing for them that I was doing as an employee, but you make better money and you have better hours. So somewhere in there I figured out that my real value was something that I knew how to do that entrepreneurs didn't, which is friending. I was working for these amazing brands, helping them become bigger and loving that. I really loved that. But I didn't like someone else determining my value. So now I show entrepreneurs how to brand yourself like the big guys do. Because when you really do it from who you are, a lot of people mention what you value, what your vision is, what matters to you, and build a business and a brand around that, you are unstoppable. I want to show people how to do that. And it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't learned it in the journey that I had.
So hi, I'm Bob. My story is I didn't realize as common until I started meeting more people that made the transition. So I started in, I actually was a cable guy, and I lost my job in 2008 during the recession. And well, actually I was fired, it had nothing to do with the recession, this is me trying to but wasn't putting the cable in properly, I guess, I don't know. So I lost my job, and at the time I had a side hustle fixing computers. And when I lost my job, I had a 1-year-old son, and I had a baby on the way, and I talked to my wife at the time, and I said, what should we do? And I was, I thought at the time I was unemployable because I'd just been fired from a major telecom company, and it was the recession. So I said, I think the best thing we need to do here is just me continue to build a side hustle and make it full time. And I did, and we did, and we grew that company in our first year, our second year, sorry, we grew it to $250,000 ourselves. We started getting large clients like Bell Canada. Ironically, the people that fired me became our client eventually. It was kind of nice. I charged them a lot. I didn't for all of those with Rogers bills. And I'm like, this guy, this is why it's happening. So I built this company. It was on HGTV, so I got to work with people like Mike Holmes and Scott McGilvery. It just was evolving and doing so very well. And much like you guys, it was me figuring it out along the way, and my wife just being very supportive at the time. So eventually, through some really bad circumstances, my marriage ended, which actually left me homeless. So for about a year, I was crashing on couches. I was in my car for a bit, which in the Canadian winter is never fun. But then I figured out if I stay in a storage unit, it was warm, but then they figured out that's not allowed. So again, very entrepreneurially, tried to just find places to sleep and eat. So I did that for a year, and I had to really let go of my ego and my pride and go back to the workforce, and that was really hard. But talk about stumbling, I stumbled onto this great opportunity with the government where I started doing small business consulting. So there were all of these really small rural communities up north and out east that had business owners that needed help with business advice. And so I remember when I did the interview, they would basically tell me, just teach them to do what you did so they won't do it. Just teach them not to fail. And I was like, oh, I have experience in that, we can do that. So I spent 4 years doing that with the government, and although the work was wonderful, it's interesting what happens when you take a piece of art and put it in an institutional system, right? You have a desire and a thing that you love to do, but the moment you put rules and boxes around it, it's not the same. And so 4 years bouncing around community to community. Although I had homes, I was still bouncing around moving. And eventually, actually more recently this year, I made the choice, and I told one of them, I think I'm not a fit here. I need to leave. And they were shocked because as a chicken, I did it over the phone. I didn't even go in. I just said, hey guys, I don't think this is working. And I had this plan. I had this idea. I said, you know what? You've taught people how to do this for 4 years. You've been doing this yourself. There was just, to Carol's point, there was just a lot of fear, a lot of self-doubt behind me. And here I am, sort of not married anymore, don't really have any friends around me because I'm bouncing around place to place. So I just bit the bullet. And I'll tell you, we'll probably talk a little bit about motivation. I saw my kids getting older and realizing I was missing their lives. Because I was going to all of these towns where I'd have to drive back up north to see them, and then I was off again for 2 weeks doing this work. So I made that decision, for them, in honor of them, and so made that transition. Built this. It's only been 6 months, but built this company that I'm really proud of, doing stuff I really love to do, and I get to see my kids play, and I get to see them play soccer, and I get to see them do amazing things, and I don't have to do it out of my car. I can do it in a very safe environment. So I guess I'm a two-time entrepreneur. One time I was forced into it. The second time I made the choice. To this day, Bobby and I joke a lot because we both have South Asian parents, but to this day, my mom still has that disapproving, like, stupid guy. That's a stupid guy, I don't know. Because, you give up a government job with benefits and golden handcuffs, right? But it's also pride. She gets to tell everybody, my son works for the government. He's very high paid, yeah, not Ford, but he works everywhere else. So she lost that. That really broke her heart. So that really was my story. And again, I'm sure a lot of you resonate with parts of everything I'm saying to you, but the biggest fear I deal with when I talk to business owners and entrepreneurs that are starting out is they'll say, well, what if I fail? And I tell them, man, I lived in a car for a year and came back. There's always a way to come back, right? And in fact, failure was a really good lesson for me because if you knew me 5 years ago, I was a very different person, right? I was an unhappy person. I was very arrogant. I honestly will tell you, I wasn't a good person. I never gave to UNICEF. I was a very bad person. So it took me those 5 years of these constant transitions and movements and failures to really become the Bob that I want to be. So that's, I guess, really my transition story. Thanks.
All right, this chair is very comfortable, honestly. Out of curiosity, if I can ask you guys a question. By show of hands, how many of you are looking to do a transition by choice? Meaning you want to move in a new direction. And how many of you are doing it because of being laid off, health issues, you're kind of forced? Okay, oh, interesting. So like I said in my bio mentioned, I went through both. I'm not gonna focus too much on the first part, which is a choice one. I was a stubborn, ego-driven millennial, and I graduated from aerospace engineering and didn't really have much troubles in my life. My parents brought us up with everything we needed. So my sister and I just kind of took it for granted. So, I went to overseas with Engineers Without Borders right after I graduated. Pretty much things just came to me. I was one of the youngest people in university to get an internship in aerospace engineering, and so I was like, oh, I don't want to keep doing this. I want to explore and do other things. So I started my own business, and again, I had like safety nets that allowed me to take risks, very stupid risks. They were saying cheap and bright. I was dumb and stupid. Like I wasted money. I was the entrepreneur that never was. Like I'm really not good at it, but I did anyways, and I followed that excitement. I got a lot out of it, and everything would just come to me. And it was so interesting because things were just coming. I MC a couple tours for CIBC. I would, out of the blue, get companies saying, hey, we want to pay you to come talk to our CEOs about millennials. And I'm like, sure. And I just be at something. And it was great until it stopped. And things didn't start coming in. And at that time, because of the nature of my job and coaching, I was studying the mind. I started to get really into the spiritual side of things. And then all of a sudden, I got really deep into it, down the rabbit hole. I called it a spiritual adventure. The Western world would call it bipolar tendencies. Who's right? Who knows? Then the beginning of this year, there was just so much pressure, and I started to get a pain in my chest. Moved back home. I'm a 33-year-old, living back at home with my parents. And my parents would ask me every morning, how you doing? And I'm like, I'd rather be dead. And thankfully, I had enough awareness that even though I had a lot of suicidal thoughts and stuff, I could see it, and I could notice it. I wasn't necessarily going to act on it, but I could not get rid of it. And I'm like, this just doesn't make sense. So I said, maybe this is a phase. I started going to the gym, and then one morning in June, I just broke down. Went to the gym, came back, and the one thing that everyone says should make you feel better in the morning, did it. And I just crumbled over my parents, and I started crying, and I said, something's not right. Went to the doctor, he said, it's kind of self-diagnosed at that point, so I told him what I was going through. He said, try these, so I took some medication. Within 3 weeks, the pain went away, and I had space. I don't want to say fixed it, but it gave me a lot more space. And everything changed after that, because then all of a sudden, when I had gone through that depression, I pulled away from everything. So I didn't necessarily want to transition away from what I'm doing. I wasn't exactly excited about coaching anymore, but at the same time, I felt like I had this reputation I had to uphold. But finally, now that I kind of admitted to what I was going through, I did it publicly on Facebook, it created this space to allow myself to just be me and not judge what that was in any given moment. I felt like shit, just saying I feel like shit. And what you realize is that there's gonna be people that respect you for that and that support you for that. And because of just being open and honest with everything, I managed to find 2 great positions that I'm doing right now that sort of self-managed, but great opportunities with the University of Toronto as well as a friend's consulting firm. And I was even honest with them. I said, I'm coming back into this and I have lack confidence. I don't know if I can do this. And they're like, we got you. Just keep going and we'll support you. And so it's humbled me beyond belief. I used to have a big ego, and I think I talked to one of Bobby's conferences back in the day, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm on the panel. And I'm going to teach everybody something. Now I sit here and I'm like, I just want to see you for coffee and hear your story, because life is about relationships. And if there's one thing that I'll harp on throughout this panel is, it's about relationships. Just build relationships. Even if you can't take away the intention of what that relationship has to lead to, just get to know people, because that relationship will always, you'll be able to help the other person and they'll be able to help you, sometimes just by opening up and sharing something. And that will only develop and happen when there's trust, and trust starts with a conversation. So if you have a conversation, you can be brave, as Carol said, to go out and meet people, you will start to realize that transition isn't that difficult. It's usually difficult when you start to create this big vision and you compare yourself to where you are, to where you want to be, instead of just saying, I need to be present to where I'm at and who's around me. Because I guarantee you, the universe is crazy. It unfolds in the most miraculous way. I'm not saying don't have intentions. I'm just kind of saying don't get caught up in those intentions, because they will take you all the way over there and make you seem like here is not good or not important or you're less than. But what's incredible, and if you read, when I went to that spiritual side, I read religious stuff, I read philosophical stuff, everything is about being in the moment, because that's the only thing that exists. Everything is a mental projection. So when you exist in the moment, you work with what you have, and if you only have now, you have it all. So the question is, what do you have access to right now, and how do you portray that and build on that and work with that in relation to other people, which leads to opportunities. Anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself. That's more just insight, but I'm looking forward to the questions today.
actually have to work here now. You guys were just like answering all my questions. I'm like, oh, I gotta go on to the next question here. No, this is fantastic, guys. And I think I just want to summarize a couple themes that I took from what you guys shared. One of them is that notion that Ryan called out, notion of forced versus unforced transition, and sort of the nature of those transitions and how you get into them and how they can be different, but also how they can be similar in some ways. But also that I think almost everyone talked about multiple transitions in some capacity, right? So transition is almost the constant in some ways, as opposed to being a phase, a thing. There might be more intensity to a certain moment in transition, but transition being a constant. And so instead of asking the question, I was going to ask what drove you to make that transition, because I think a lot of you guys talked about that piece. This is a question that is a little bit of a loaded one, but what would you do differently? And I think you kind of touched upon it, but I'm really curious, because I've asked you guys a little bit about your journeys previously. What would you do differently, if anything? Whoever wants to start, you can do whatever.
Do you want to start at that end? I'm good either way, but.
Okay, I'll be fairly quick because I'm not going to really answer the question probably the way people want to hear, because I know it's the cliche, you know, I wouldn't be here if I didn't go through everything I went through. And in a way, that's true, right? I'm not saying I don't have regrets. There's decisions I made in the past, I'm like, why did I make that decision? That was stupid. But the one thing that I've learned and that really helped me get through anxiety and depression is you got to realize everything is relative. So when you are in a low state, you don't know what a high state is unless you've been in that low state and you've experienced fully, by getting lost in that low state, what it's like. Right? So when we talk about joy, you don't know what joy is until you've had down or bitter or pain, right? And so when you start to realize that relative spectrum, you start to think to yourself, if I made anything different, so say I said in the past I would have made a better decision, would you have necessarily had that sort of canvas in the background to give the experience you have now the proper context? Possibly not, right? So when you try to alter what things should have been or how things should have gone, would I have done something differently? You can, and you can go wild, and it's a fun exercise just to do, to see maybe what decisions you make differently that you can now make in the future. But the danger in doing that is you start to play this game of what's better and what's worse, and that judgment creates this cycle of you never being where you are, which is right now. And if you took away every single thought of you right now, you're perfect. You're just here. You are. Whatever that is. If you drop the ego, you're just energy. You're just, So if you can get to that point of what happened along the way, what place does it play in the story of my career or life? So depression, I wouldn't do anything different. I love it because it gave me so much context and so much motivation to be honest with people and to realize that I can build a career without faking it till I make it. I can't tell you how liberating it is to go and say to someone, I went through this. I'm still going through recovery. I take medication. I'm still struggling. I have some really bad days. And for this guy who brought me on, who I know, he's like, you know what? Here's a role that's going to allow you to take naps when you need to, do this, do that, do this. And I got your back to make sure that you're successful at it. Nothing is going to beat that. And what's funny is I'm so loyal to him. He's now even getting a greater investment from me beyond just a job. He's getting somebody who's passionate. So all the things are going to give you pieces of the puzzle that are going to allow you to make sense of the puzzle. So even when you're lost, take some time to be lost and enjoy being lost. And know that if you're continuously lost, maybe your direction is no direction. Who knows? It doesn't matter. Just keep going with it and allow yourself to experience it, because it'll always play a part in the bigger picture. You just may not have the perspective for that.
I'm going to be a little bit of a shameless plug here, but I'm in the midst of doing what I'm calling a 30 for 30 campaign on social media talking about gratitude. So I'm turning 30 on October 11th, sorry. So I started my campaign back on September 11th. And today I actually leveraged the Rolling Stones, the line, you can't always get what you want, but if you try sometimes you might find you get what you need. And I think that aligns, as far as I'm concerned, or it could be just my shameless plug opportunity here. But I think it really aligns with what we're talking about, what Ryan was talking about in particular, with the idea that, I don't think you would have asked to go through that, right? But you are leveraging that experience in some way to pull yourself kind of forward, right? And you wouldn't wish it on anyone either, right? But it's just it's a learning opportunity that you want to kind of take from, and it's often difficult for us to know in the moment, any given moment, what we actually need. And in fact, sometimes we push away from what we might later find was very, very important. And so it's just, Rolling Stones is just the example in the line, but it's something that almost treating ourselves as like a startup, right? That you don't know exactly where you're going to land. And sometimes you take a huge pivot that you don't expect. But being very comfortable with that present moment is a really, really good foundational place to start. Or, as I like to say, being comfortable with your values as a person, what is most important to you, instead of the fancy shoes, the fancy job, whatever it is. Like, what is ultimately, you strip everything else away, what is ultimately most important, and allow that to be your compass. But
I just want to say real quick, life is context, right? Like when you meet someone and you date them, why you fall in love with them, why you build a rapport with them is because there's context, there's a story that has peaks and valleys. So just keep that in mind. Anything you're going through, if you're right now and you're in the shittiest part of your transition, remember that and be like, this is a great context for later on when things will be different. Better or worse is subjective, right?
Okay, I'm gonna be super practical. I love that we've gone so spiritual, and that's really important to me too. But when I think back of myself in my career, and especially when I became an entrepreneur, but I think it applies to everybody, whether you're an entrepreneur or some kind of hybrid, like you're doing side gigs or you're working for a company. So the thing that I did, and I feel like I was kind of conditioned to do this, was that I didn't exactly fake it till I made it. I believed that I had to find all the answers myself. Like, that was my responsibility. So if I was gonna be an entrepreneur, if I was gonna start a company, I had no right to ask someone who was above me, to ask someone who had a company that was bigger than mine, or that was in my industry, how they did it. Because that was the war I was supposed to win on my own. And I wasted a lot of time. So my suggestion is, or if I'm talking to myself, my suggestion to my younger self was, for me it wasn't a matter of ego. So when people would be like, oh, drop your ego, it wasn't that for me. I wasn't trying to fake it till I made it. I was like, I don't want to bother anybody. Or I'm not sure that I'm using the right words to even ask about this. I don't know that I know the right kind of like entrepreneurial lingo to be rubbing shoulders with people. So even when I met people and they were like, Katrina, how can I help you? I was like, I'm doing great. My business is great. And I could have totally taken advantage of their help. And now that I'm in the position that I'm in, and I still have a long way to go on my journey, but the position that I'm in, and people come and ask me, I sometimes see it in them too, right? I'm like, hey, how can I help you with your career, or with your company, or with what you want to do? And I see the hesitation there too. And so I think it's interesting that it's human nature, right? We want to share what we know. We want to make the journey easier for someone else. It's not a burden to give that gift to someone else. And I feel like if I'd learned that lesson a lot earlier, I'd be a lot further ahead, not just professionally, but personally too. I think in the past, I would say 5 years, I've gotten better at asking. And the delightful thing is, it enhanced my relationships. People didn't feel like I was taking advantage. Some people were like, oh, I'm so glad you asked me. Like, I'm so glad you can benefit from the 2 years that I spent stewing in this stuff, and I can tell you how I did it, so that it's not going to be as painful for you, so it'll be more fun for you, so that you have a better chance of success. And I've told this story before, and people have said, yeah, but what if I connect with somebody and they're a potential client, they're a prospect, or they're a potential employer, and I'm asking them things that they feel like I should know. So that's the risk you're going to take, right? And if somebody is decides that they want to throw their ego around, that's a reflection on them, right? There is a difference, right? You don't want to be like, hi there, can you write my business plan for me? Or can you please make an introduction to the most famous person you know? Because people will be like, I'm sorry, you're who, right? There's a difference between that and building a relationship. But if you do try to build a relationship with someone in an honest way, and it doesn't go well, try someone else. That person might just be an asshole. So that's my suggestion, is start asking for help. When you don't know the answer, ask someone else. And even if you don't know the question, if your question is something like, I'm starting a business, or I'm really interested in this particular industry, I'm interested in solar technology, I don't know how to get into it. Start asking questions, even if you feel like your question is imperfect. If you ask that question wholeheartedly, most people, particularly successful people, whatever that means, are going to be happy to share their knowledge with you.
I would say stop planning. Stop trying to plan your next move, your next thought, your next meeting, your next career. Have a vision, yes. Then let the plan happen. Do you see the difference? Know what your value is, and that takes some work and takes some personal development and might take you longer than it might take somebody else. There's no timeline on it. We're all adjusting our vision as we go. One of the things that I did repeatedly until not that long ago was trying to control the situation. Trying to control my income, control my relationships with executives, trying to control the meeting. Like, it comes across probably not how I want it to, but you know what I mean? It's very much trying to anticipate what was going to happen next. And like what Ryan was saying, you're going to ruin the moment. You lose the moment altogether. Those moments are what people call a career. Over and over and over and over. When I cried when they let me go at that agency, it was because I was worrying, right, about what's going to happen next. How are people going to see me now? Where's my next paycheck going to come from? All of this thinking in a split second, and all it was this opportunity's over. That was the reality. This opportunity's over. And then you worry because you're planning, and something happened that wasn't in your plan. What if you didn't have so many stupid plans? What if you went with the flow a little bit more? I'm not saying don't have a vision. I'm big on vision. Be intentional about what you want, but not try not to control so hard how you get there. That would make any transition easier.
I think for me, I have three, sorry, but I'll do them real quick, I promise. The first one is I agree with Katrina, and for a long time when I was doing what I was doing, I never asked anyone for help. Now, in my situation, I was sort of stumbling into entrepreneurship, so I didn't really know leaders that I could talk to, but what I found out later was there were all of these government subsidized programs like Small Business Enterprise Centers, Community Future Development Corps, Business Development Canada. There were so many places I could go as a person that was a solo entrepreneur and just didn't know anybody that I could get free advice. And I never took the time to ask that question, where can I go for help? So even though you guys might be saying I'm gonna make this transition, but I don't really know other business leaders, there's so many agencies out there that your taxes pay for, not to be crass, that you can take advantage of and say, I need help with this, how do I figure this out? I will tell you, it would be a good idea to visit a few of them, not just rely on one. I think the second one for me was building a better tribe. So my first round of entrepreneurship, I didn't really have a great tribe, right? My friends, or my friend network was built on my wife's friends, or at the time my wife. So, I didn't really have people I could talk to about the challenges I were facing, because my fear was, well, either they're going to judge me or they're going to tell my wife on me, right? So at the time, that's how I thought. I would have spent more time finding other entrepreneurs who are at my level. So to Katrina's point, you want to find people a little bit above you so you can, or ahead of you so you can talk to them. But I would have found people who have the same pains as me, the struggles as me, who maybe had a partner who wasn't in entrepreneurship so they could talk and share about what it's like to try and explain to your non-entrepreneurship partner why this sale didn't go through. The third one, which I I regret most actually is my marriage ended because I wasn't a communicator. And all of the things that happened in our business when it came to stress, finances, all of that stuff happened because I didn't tell her. I didn't communicate anything to her. And we eventually got to this place where she was shocked to learn not only the debt that we were in, but how poor the business was doing. And I have to tell you, a big part of, a big regret for me is losing that. Not only just, not so much for me, I mean, she's a nice lady, but she's met someone else and she's happy now, but more for my children, right? You know, for a long time, when they look at you and they say, are you sure you and mommy won't get back together? That's a really hard thing to swallow, because you know you were the instigator of that breakup, right? So I would have, I don't know, to be honest with you, I don't know that we'd still be married, but I would have at least made more of a process or a conscious effort to work on that relationship. And I guess the summary I'm trying to make here is all three of them came from ego. So I guess my biggest overall regret is not having humility, right? I had a lot of people telling me I was amazing and really great. I had HGTV producers calling me, I had people wanting to be my friend, I had people inviting me to networking events for free. It just, you know, I wish I had someone in my life at the time that said, you know, there's always gonna be someone else better than you. And the moment my marriage ended and that business ended, I was shocked to learn how little I actually had, right? So I think that was the biggest regret, is I wish I had more humility in the process that of what it was.
So I think what I'm hearing from both the most recent answers to the question, but also your opening, and I think Ryan specifically spoke to this as well, is the importance of relationships, the importance of people, and how even in these other events that we've had with LinkedIn Locals and probably some of the other workshops and other sort of personal development stuff that you've done, it seems like this similar theme of people coming back to relationships and the importance of relationships is critical. And I don't think there's anything different when it comes to the issue of transitions. So I'm going to ask a practical question to Katrina's point around the building of relationships, and how do you practically kind of work through that, particularly if you're earlier in your career, but frankly any time in your career. And I'll maybe just simply, I'll ask the question and give a couple thoughts on my front. But if you are, now that you guys are more experienced in your careers, if you look back to somebody who's maybe a few years behind you, how would you best advise them to sort of approach you? Like how would you prepare in these types of things? So that's the question, so think about that for a second. And this is how I answer the question. I basically say, do your homework, right? So if you're going to meet with somebody for a coffee or something like that, don't ask them questions that you can find easily on their social media or on a website, right? Use the time in a way that is value added, not only for you, but for them. That's kind of the second point, is to say, you are not entitled to their time. So make use of that time and add value to that time. Doesn't mean that, you know, if I'm going to meet with a big CEO at, you know, Bell or Rogers or something like that, which I'm not doing, but say I was, it's asymmetrical in the context of a professional situation, obviously, right? But you can still add value to them by being on time, doing your homework, and being very grateful for the fact that they made time for you, right? They're not gods, but they have very little time to spend on things that you can easily find elsewhere. So do your homework and never feel entitled to their time. And just try to ask really good questions, prepare. So that'd be the big things for me.
That's a good one. I'd say kind of try to read the room. If you're catching somebody who you think can help you, right? Let's say you're at a conference, something like this, or like a big conference where there's a lot more people, and you're catching somebody who's like on their way to the bathroom. This has happened to me, and I think I've actually done this to people too. They're probably not going to be super friendly, right? And then people sometimes interpret this as like that person being hostile. And that's not the case, you just caught them at the wrong time. So like, read the room and like choose your moments. You also don't wanna like show up and be like, can you read my business plan? Or like, hey, it's an informational interview, maybe you're learning about, I don't know, cryptocurrency or something. And you're like, can you look at my resume? Can you review my CV? Like, you kind of have to just read what they're saying to you. And if you're not sure, you can ask, right? So for example, if you like get that one moment with somebody and they look like they're rushing, you can say, hey, I'm really sorry to bother you, but I really admire you. I love the book that you wrote. You look like you're rushing off somewhere. Is there any chance I could catch a moment of your time at another point when you're not rushing off somewhere? Most people will be like, oh, like, thank you for thinking of me, right? I think that sometimes we go into these situations and we're thinking about not just what can I get out of this. I don't think everybody walks around like that, but we're like, how do I make sure I impress this person? How do I tell them how great I am? And instead, recognize that it's still just a two-way communication between two human beings, right? So just being cognizant of that person and what they're presenting you with. And then to your point too, if somebody is granting you some time, man, that sounds like an audience with the Queen, which is not what I mean. But if somebody is making the time to help you, don't read other intentions into it, right? Most people, if they're genuinely just trying to help you, are just trying to help you. And if you start to bring your other kind of baggage into those situations, those conversations get really strange when you're the person trying to help, right? And then the third thing is, everybody has some value to give. I get it, I know we're in an era and lots of people want to fight me on this, and I'm happy to have this debate. But like, I got really good at marketing because I did a whole bunch of stuff for free or really cheap. I'm not saying you do this forever in your career, but also some of the people I admire the most, right? Some of the people who are way ahead of me that I think are really great and are doing the types of things in their businesses I want to do with mine, they spend a lot of time doing stuff for free. They sit on boards, right? They mentor people for free. They help their colleagues for free. And so I think it's an interesting era we've gotten into where it's like, always charge your value. Cool, but value comes in different ways, right? So there have been instances even where people have helped me with my company, especially lately since I've learned how to ask people for help. People have helped me with my company who I couldn't afford to pay. There's no way. In fact, they wouldn't even have a billing rate, right? But I have helped them by facilitating another connection or something that they needed or wanted. And I was happy to do that because generally speaking, it comes around. There's a cool concept to look up if you're curious and kind of nerdy like me, and it's karmic capitalism. And some people are really turned off by it, and that's cool because it has the word capitalism in it. But it's basically the idea that, you know, what you put out in the world will come back to you in a very practical way, right? It's an energetic thing, yes, but it's also very practical. When you make a connection for someone, you don't know if you're going to need a connection from them, but you might. Now, one minor caveat, and then I promise I'll stop talking about this and harping on it. One caveat is you do want to be a little bit careful if you're someone like me who's like a major giver, right? Like, I'll just give and give and give because that's how I'm programmed. You also have to make sure that you are in that equation, right? And be conscious of the things that you're committing yourself to. Be conscious of the relationships that you're entering into. Because as I mentioned, when you're asking these people for help, most people want to help you. Occasionally you meet an asshole. When you meet an asshole, you say, thanks so much, you cut ties, you don't ask them for anything again, and you withdraw your energy, your attention, your connections, everything. That's also essential, right? So, because I hear us all talking about like, give, connect, like, you know, be this person. And there's also the other side to that, which is don't suddenly become an extremist, right? Where you're like, I will do everything, I will volunteer for everything, I will help everybody, and think that that's going to come back to you in the way. So pick your moments, think about who you're connecting with, think about when you're connecting with them. I do agree, be prepared. If you're not prepared, admit that you're not prepared. Please don't pretend you read someone's book if you haven't. That's not good, right? And treat people like another human being. That's where I would start. And treat yourself well too. It's important to treat yourself well in these communications too. Cool.
Cool. It's all good, guys.
So for me, what I would say is first context, right? I've kind of left the entrepreneur world because, like I said, I really sucked at it. Very happy with steady income coming in and different streams. So that's where I'm coming from when I talk about relationships and to address this question. first thing I found is meet people you genuinely want to meet. They keep coming to mind, or you find them interesting, and if it feels like work, or you feel like, oh my God, I need to plan this, probably shouldn't meet with them, because you're not going to be as engaged, and you're going to be forcing it. When you are an entrepreneur, that can be difficult, because you might have to meet for strategic reasons, so I understand that. In that case, you're going to have to find a reason to want to meet, but for the most part, if you're just trying to build relationships, see who you want to meet. Then make an offer by email or text or whatever it is, whoever you know, and just see if they don't want to meet, then don't worry. So the second thing is meet people that want to meet you back. Because then what happens when you get into that conversation, you both want to be there. And that's the most difficult thing about conversations. That's why at networking events we get so scared, because we don't know if the other person wants to listen to us or if we want to talk to them. So it's always this little thing. So if you can get that out of the way. The third thing I would say that's so important, that's helped me a lot and I think has revolutionized everything in my latest transition, is come to the table ready to be vulnerable. And when you do that, not only do you get rid of, A, you build trust, B, you build rapport very quickly, C, you create space for yourself to really be present in that conversation, and D, most important, you allow the other person to also be vulnerable. And what I've found is in the conversations when you're vulnerable, and I'm not talking about like, oh, you know, I'm struggling because I don't feel well today. That's fine, if that's the only thing you come up with, go, but try to go deeper. And again, if you both want to be there, it'll be okay to talk about this. And what you'll find is through that vulnerability is usually where you're going to find more and more connection. And so when I first came out of depression, took my medication, people were like, oh, Ryan, I'm here for you, I'm here for you. I started to say, who do I want to meet? Who comes to mind? And I just reached out and people would be like, sure, I'd love to meet you. And one of the things I made it a rule for myself is I need to tell them that part of my story. I'm not going to just say all the good stuff. I'm not going to say where I'm going next. I'm going to make a point. And each time I did, they said, you know, I've been struggling in my marriage. I've been struggling with this. And we created this bond where we check in on each other, where we follow up with each other. And what's so cool is that's how the opportunities that I now have that I thought I would never have in my wildest dreams came about, and why the relationships with those people I work with is so strong. Because we're not hiding anything. We're so transparent that we can support each other and work together. And you carry less baggage when you go into more and more meetings. And because you're not forcing it, you're naturally just organically unfolding this story that's kind of contained within you. And I know that sounds philosophical and it may be a little la-la, but give it a chance. Allow yourself to see what the unfolding can do by not being so specific in what you need to get out of that conversation or what you need to give, by just saying, what if I be vulnerable? And I'll start with that and see what happens.
Sorry, can I throw something in really quick? I'm going to counter you a little bit, just a teeny bit. So,
It's my job to be in the middle here.
So one thing that I've learned is sometimes you only get one moment. And a very good friend of mine was telling me about like this superstar entrepreneur he'd been trying to meet his whole life. And the guy said to him, how can I help you? And he was like, I would just love to connect with you. You're awesome. And he started sharing his vulnerable stories. And I actually don't consider this guy an asshole. He was like, hey, I'm going to stop you. I actually want to help you, but you got to have an ask. So I think too, we have to be careful about, like, what I would say is what all of us say is just from our own personal experience. So don't take anything that we say as being gospel, because we all have, I don't know where that came from, I'm not even religious, anyway. But don't take anything that we say as being like absolute truth and that it must apply to you, because I'm thinking of lots of situations where if I did that, like,
well, and I think that's why I caveated my whole thing by saying the context. What are you really networking or building relationships for? Because for me, I want to hear your story. I don't need you to give me an opportunity. I don't need you to scale up. Like that's the thing, is there's a difference where, for me, by getting to know you, I don't know where that relationship can go, but at the same time, I can pay my bills. So you have to gauge, because you're right. If you go in and you have this opportunity and the person, like you said, read the room, that's not what they're into, then it's gonna.
I also think there are moments to be really vulnerable, even in really like business-like transactions. I don't love the word vulnerable necessarily, but to be really open-hearted, right, and to share your story, and more importantly, to ask people about theirs. I think that the pendulum can swing too far one way too, and Personally, I'm pretty much as woo-woo as they come, though, much though I seem to be like the practical heavyweight on this panel. I'm not sure how that happened. But all that to say, I just think it's good like to think about like what's the context in which I'm making these connections, and also how is the other person showing up to me? Because I also think sometimes some people, I think if you and I, for example, or if any of us like went out for dinner, we could all be pretty open-hearted with each other, right? But I think there are also instances where people take a lot longer to warm up. And if you hit them with that right away, you sometimes get the wall go up and they're like, I'm out. Just a thought.
Yeah, maybe not the good strategy networking events when you're coffee. I would say my strategy is best. And again, you both opted in, so make sure that's there too.
I would say that you need to get in the room with the people who are where you want to be. For a really long time, I thought I wasn't worthy of being in those rooms, that if I hadn't, I'm talking about networking events or on stages or parties or vacations, you know, all this, the cool stuff that you see other people doing, and you're like, one day I'm gonna be with those people. Now I'm with those people. You're gonna be with those people if you make a decision that you play as big as they play. And that doesn't mean they're better than you. It's not about money, it's not about wardrobe, it's not about experience. It is about the value that you can bring to the conversation. So you've probably heard about Richard Branson invites a small number of people to Necker Island, however often he does that. Have you ever met any of those people who've been?
Yes.
Just normal people. They're just normal people, and they've made an intention that they're running in the circles where big idea people are running. Why not you? Why not you? So the whole moment that you decide, I'm just gonna get around other people, and I don't mean like crashing the door, though I have done that. I mean contributing to the world that they're in. So if there's somebody that you want to meet, we're gonna assume that you are in their space somehow. You know, if you want to meet Gary Vaynerchuk, then you really do follow people in social media, you like entrepreneurship, you like his hard stance on things. There's a reason why you connect with him on a personal level. I've met Gary Vaynerchuk. I never went up to the guy and asked him for something. I told him what he meant to me. When you go in rooms with people, I think you were saying that too, is connect with the person. It's not about flattery or celebrity and that kind of thing, they're just people. And everyone here has been talking about relationships. Buy a ticket to the event they're at. Show up at the event. Volunteer if you have to. Make yourself known in a meaningful way though. So I think sometimes people are saying, well, how can I get in front of that person? How can I get them to pay attention to me? How can I get them to help me? They're going about life not even knowing you exist. What changes is when you're contributing to things. So you'll find, have you ever met somebody who they're like, I know who you are? And you're thinking, really? How do you know that? You've done something significant that they saw. I play almost entirely on online, so it's definitely easier. You're seen now, right? You know that you're getting seen in most things that you do, so how are you showing up? Then it becomes reciprocal. It's not just them and you, it's everybody together.
We should clap.
So for me, my first round of entrepreneurship, the first round, I begged for everybody's attention. I went to every event, I friended everybody on Facebook, I did whatever I could, and I had no boundaries. I just, whoever said, you look pretty, I was like, yeah, we're friends, that's it. I just went crazy. And what was a real eye-opening experience is, as I said earlier, is when I went through that transition, or as I like to call that, evolution, they were all gone. They were all gone. So the second round, when I said, okay, I have to build up my network again, but I'm going to be smarter about it, is I made it more compartmentalized. So what I did is I knew that there were people I wanted to meet, and I knew as I built my brand, there were people that would want to meet me. So I went really practical. And this will sound really crass, but when I get to the second stage, you'll see why. So I knew I only had so much, it wasn't even my time, I only had so much energy with people. I don't know if it's because I'm an EFPP, TP, whatever, personality. I only can do so much in humans. So what I found was I need to manage that. So I created a funnel. And the way the funnel works is this. If someone is interested in meeting me, the first thing I do is I have an automated link, an Acuity link. They have to go to the Acuity link and book an appointment. And when they book that appointment, it syncs with my calendar. They get a time when I've chosen that I'm willing to talk to people about anything and everything they want, whether it's a sales lead or whether it's a mentorship call, what have you. And I cap it, right? I used to do 45, now I've capped it at 15 minutes. And then I added a little questionnaire. So you see, I started making them work. And I did that because if they really want to talk to me, they'll do the work. If they're gonna sell me their amazing network marketing company, they're not gonna do the work. You see the difference? So I had to really be mindful of that. And I did have people get mad. People were like, why are you so hard to get a hold of? And I said, it's if you really want to, you'll do this process. But then there were people I wanted to meet. So a good example would be, is I find them on social, I connect with them on social, and then what I do is I engage with them on social. So I don't even have an ask, I don't private message them. I look at what they like, what other pages they like. This sounds a bit creepy, but there's a professional aspect to it. I look at what they like, where they engage, who else are they commenting with, when they ask for help, and I simply play with them on social. I just talk to them, I look at sharing content that might be relevant, I share their content, and so I build that relationship to a point where they remember my name. So they might not remember me and what I do, but they remember the name. And then over time, that relationship eventually evolves, whether I see them at an event, whether they reach out to me, whether I reach out to them. So I'm very purposeful in how I build relationships, right? If you want to get to talk to me, you kind of have to work a little bit for it, but once you do, it's so worth it. That's what I say in my head. And then if I want to meet people, same thing, I work for it. I make an effort, and I get to know them, and I don't even private message them. I do it publicly and connect with them and share with them. Then I discovered this concept of an inner circle. So then what I started doing is, over the summer especially, I've been doing a lot of inner work, and I realized that a lot of the work I was doing led to a lot of loneliness. I was doing all of these online calls, Zoom calls, things like that. I wasn't actually connecting with people. So then I started doing this thing where those people where I would meet, if I connected with them on 3 levels, number 1, their vision was similar to mine, their core values were similar to mine, and we had an energetic response. And when I say energy, you don't have to be in front of them live. You can feel an energy on the phone, you can even feel it online. If they met those 3 criteria, I fell in business love with them, no questions. I would tell them I'm obsessed with their success, I would support them and help them, and this inner circle really was a really amazing staple for mental health. It was really amazing, especially when I did TEDx, and TEDx brought out so many people. They're probably watching, so they'll get mad, but so many people that weren't authentic, right? I just a lot of people who just wanted the TEDx brand tied to their name. And if I didn't have that inner circle that really kept me humble, that really kept me straight, that made me realize, look, these are just people who don't understand vision or value or etc., I think that would have driven me nuts. So when we talk about relationships, there's 2 levels for me. There's the vision, core value, energetic relationship, the inner circle. We go out for coffee, but we may not talk about business. We may talk about life, family. We may talk about how can we get together on Necker Island, right? We share those similar values, right? But when it comes to connecting professionally, I have a purposeful path that someone has to take to get to me, or I pursue to get to them. So a romantic side and an unromantic side. But for me, I think this round, immensely helpful. I honestly think, not to sound dark, but if I lost everything again, I literally know that inner circle, I can call them. Thank you, my foundation, absolutely, thank you, yeah. Did you want it? Yeah, you did, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, and so I think it's in some ways, and to sort of summarize that particular point, your network is your net worth. And it's really kind of something that I've internalized in a lot of ways, and I think, again, relationships are coming up here. I like to use the test of good people doing good things. You go to meetings with curiosity, with the opportunity to learn, obviously do your homework, as I said before. The other thing is, and you mentioned Gary Vaynerchuk, right? A lot of people are probably like, oh, I'd love to meet Gary Vaynerchuk. And I'm like, hey, look, it'd be great to meet Gary Vaynerchuk. But there's people who are like, quote unquote, just below, I don't know if that's the right word to use, but just below Gary Vaynerchuk, that are not getting nearly as much traffic to them. But they're just as fantastic, maybe not as quite out there as he is. Use that mindset in other organizations or other people that you're trying to meet. Like, there are great people doing great things that aren't on social media with their brands out there in a very overt way. Find those people and learn from them. And the last thing I said, again, it's almost a summary in some ways, is driven by your values. So go to the people and put yourself in rooms with those who share your values. Not in a way that becomes a sort of monolith and you don't learn anything, it becomes almost cultish, but in a way that says, we share many of the core things, but I can also learn from you, right? Enough that we can build cohesion, but enough difference as well that you can learn and grow together. So speaking of learning and growing together, as I just made up a segue as I go through here, I'd like to engage you folks in the audience to see if there's any questions and maybe some online as well. So let's take this moment to ask some questions. So is there any online as of now?
I believe there was one.
Okay. Oh, okay.
David Munford is asking, how is the best way to wait for a transition between moving up and knowing that the position you are in will just benefit you down the road?
Okay, so I don't know if you guys,
Does that make sense?
do you guys understand that? Can you read it one more time for people like me?
So how is the best way to wait for a transition between moving up and knowing that the position you're in will just benefit you down the road?
So do they move on to a new career or job or
Promotion. Oh, they
yeah,
stick it out.
yeah,
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So did everyone hear that? Okay. You guys have any thoughts?
Okay.
So, yeah, I think we're constantly provided by signs of opportunity. And I think, for people like me that squirrel and we move, we really have to focus on that. You're laughing, but I thought I actually saw a squirrel, so I was like, oh. So I think, when it comes to David's question, so the first time I was in entrepreneurship, I would say, go with your gut, man. Go with your passion, love it. And then I lost my marriage and my family. And then I realized I need to be more practical about these decisions. And there's nothing wrong with romanticizing the concept, right? So believe in your gut, believe in the universe, I believe in science. But then what's the practical look at it, okay? So either you stay where you are, then you need to measure, do I have a manager and a leadership team that believes in me and shows a pattern of promoting from within or bringing from without, right? If it's, do I move on to another company? Well, you know what's gonna happen, you're gonna lose seniority. So what is, talking to people who currently are employed at that other place, what is the propensity of people leaving? What's their churn? So, it's all about covering your bases. You stay where you are and you think, okay, well, what's the propensity of getting, what are the chances based on historical data where I am now? Also, how happy am I? I make that not sound important, but it is important. And then if you're making the move, okay, so at that other place, is the grass actually greener? Can I talk to people there who are there and what's their churn rate? Because what we find statistically is never the truth. I can tell you from working for private telecom and government, I think it was Katrina's point earlier, whatever their editorial biography, whatever it looks like, it's never the truth. Never. And I don't mean to sound crass, but I've seen so many companies win, happiest employee family of the year, all these things. I know that's not true. I know that that's not true, right? Or they're just measuring heuristics and data that really aren't tapping into that. So that would be, I think, my answer to David, for sure.
Thank you.
Yes.
I was just going to say to Bob's point is, oftentimes we fantasize that idea of what the other thing's going to be, and we make the decision on that, and we go for the next thing we want to get just to get away from the other thing. And so I think what you said about that being realistic and grounded is so important because it allows you to really measure, maybe I don't have that ideal situation that I envision in my head, but this practical basis, I could build on this foundation, something that's a little bit better.
Maybe I'll just add to that, and then Julia can add as well. I think part of the question there is, what game am I playing, right? Like, I talk about values, it's kind of my shtick in some ways, but if the question is how fast can I make as much money as possible, then that might dictate a certain set of outcomes, or at least narrow your set of outcomes, right? And it's not to say that's a bad thing, that might be in service of an even broader goal. But if your goals and your value set is driving you towards a different type of game and a different type of outcome, then that's going to set the stage as well. So I think, to me, it all starts with values. It all starts with what is actually most important to you, and doing that deep work, as Bobby was talking about earlier, doing that deep and hard work that is an ongoing life journey, but it requires you doing some concerted effort to sit back and see what is actually most important to me, is a prerequisite. It's not the only thing, it's not sufficient, but it's a necessary condition, if you will, to answering that question.
Yeah, I think I have questions about that question. Like, what? It sort of depends. Is to what Nick is saying. if you're driven by fear to leave that position, well, what's that all about? When this person said, if I'm not mistaken, they said, you know that this current position will benefit you down the road? How do you know that? How do you know that? So,
Your gut, I guess.
yeah, and maybe you do know it. But if you really don't, like if you are, sort of goes to what I was talking about with planning, if you are a little bit more go with the flow, and I get the practicality, I totally understand that. What is driving your decision? Is it the need for being perceived as somebody who doesn't quit? Because many of us have been there. We stay in situations or positions because we don't want to look like we gave up, or we think it's going to lead to something down the road that you have no idea if it will or not. By the way, it usually doesn't. I like Nick's answer around using your value system to drive those decisions, because that will never be the wrong decision. I actually posted today on Facebook about the reason we get stuck is because we're afraid to do something wrong. What if you just did it? And then if it's wrong, it's wrong. That'll show up later.
Yeah, and wrong based on what?
Yeah, exactly.
Could be right relative.
Yeah.
Okay, so my suggestion is reverse engineer that shit. So where do you want to be? Where do you want to be? Is this going to, and there's no way of knowing, is it more likely to push you towards where you want to go, or is it not, right? You don't have to jump at every opportunity. We're a very progress obsessed society. I am very progress obsessed as an entrepreneur, so I get you, right? But you also want to say, okay, even if you don't 100% know, and I agree, you can't plan everything out, you don't really know what the outcome is going to be. Think about, okay, is this more likely to move me in the direction that I want to be? Is this more in alignment with what I want? And then also de-risk it, right? So a lot of the people I admire the most de-risk the crap out of everything they do, right? And I think that's a lesson that I've learned to apply in not just my professional life, but my personal life. If I do this thing, what are all of the things that could go wrong? Not in a way of scaring myself out of it, but in a way of saying, okay, how can I protect myself if these things happen? So if you're gonna stay, say, okay, if I stay and I miss out on this opportunity, what are the things that could go wrong? Maybe I'll never see it again. How likely is that to happen? If I don't see it again in this way, can I pursue something else? Or if I do take this opportunity, what if the company I'm moving to folds? What if they don't like me? What if it doesn't work out? So working through those scenarios and saying, okay, I get what the what ifs are. How am I just gonna protect myself from those things? How can I build them out? Are you gonna be able to actually plan all this out and make sure it all works out perfectly? No, but it can help you make the decision from a place that's much more rational than from a place that's like a do or die kind of place, which is how most people make most of their decisions when they have to do with career.
All right, so we have time for one last question. So is there anyone in the audience that wants to ask that burning question? Yeah, in the back. Can you project, or do you want the mic?
I can project.
All right, go for it.
So on the topic of new connections, and we're talking a little bit about informational interviews, I had a question that kind of went on the whole topic of asking a question where you can't necessarily find the answer online. And kind of on that topic, I want to ask, what questions would you recommend we really ask to be able to foster that relationship and really be able to get a good conversation with a potential new connection?
I think the question that always gets well received is, how can I help you? So if you are wanting to connect with someone else, have some idea, and you will, some idea of what it is they do and how they add value to your life and how you fit with that whole deal. And then ask them, how can I serve you? You know, a lot of people say, like a mentorship relationship is there's the mentee and the mentor, but it's reciprocal. It's still reciprocal. It's not what can I get from the person. I know you're not saying that. But yeah, that question, how can I help you? You'll see all kinds of people at all different levels of success ask that of each other all the time. All the time. We say it all the time. How can I help you? Because we don't know. We really don't know what our value could be to somebody else until they tell us. And then it starts a conversation.
something that comes to mind for me, and again, it depends on the context. I'm saying this not as an entrepreneur, so I want to be clear, and not necessarily looking for a position, but something that really has helped me is when I send the email, that's the first opportunity I have to ask the question, right? Before I even get into that conversation. And what I started to do was just say, here's where I'm at, and here's what I'm looking for. Would you be open to me? And I feel like when you're transparent with someone and you make it clear where you're at, what you're looking for, them saying yes makes it a heck of a lot easier when you sit down over coffee to just kind of explore and not necessarily have to come up with the right question you're gonna ask. Because there's something about opt-in that creates this space to not have to plan everything out, and you can kind of see where it goes and let it unfold. So by being transparent in that email or in that invite and saying, hey, you know what, I just came out of a really bad mental health issue and I'm struggling to find my way again. I'd love to get some insight. I noticed you're in this space and I was wondering if you'd be open to a coffee. As soon as they say yes, now I know I don't need to worry in that coffee about what exactly I need to have say to them to hold their attention, because they know the context in which I'm approaching it. So that's just something to keep in mind that might be beneficial if you feel comfortable. Not everyone's comfortable opening up and talking about themselves, but that's if you do feel.
Yeah, I think it's really important.
Yeah. I think for me, very similar to Julia's point is, I find when I try and ask people how I can help them, because I do a lot of small businesses, right? So a lot of small business owners typically aren't as open, right? So I usually ask the question of, in an ideal world, who can I connect you to? Because I have a really large network. So very similar to Julia's point, I'll say if you had every customer you wanted, but there was still something plaguing you, who's somebody I can connect you to, right? And sometimes it's not somebody I can connect them to, it's their answer, right? So it goes back to core values. So if they were to say, I would love for you to connect me with Kevin O'Leary, and I'd be like, we're not gonna be a good match. So I'll just usually say, that's great, that's awesome. So I use it on two levels. One, maybe I can connect them to somebody, but it's also a great way of me vetting a psychographic to determine, do we have similar values? Because my hope is that they would say a name or they would ask for something that would sort of resonate with me. But if it's something more along the lines of something that really didn't resonate with me, then it sort of defines that relationship.
Yeah, you want to avoid the name dropping.
Well, I don't even mind the name dropping. It's just, I'm just not a fan of Kevin. Sorry, Kevin. I'm just not a fan of Kevin O'Leary. Just because we have different core values. He's an incredibly smart person, an incredibly accomplished, successful entrepreneur, but we just don't have common core values, right? That's the only difference, really. So.
Okay, so I would say to be really brass tacks about it, I don't know why that's my job on this panel. Okay, cool. You want to think about, and I don't often think about levels, and I don't mean levels in terms of importance as a human being. That is not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying in terms of how far ahead of you they are or not on a particular topic where you want to be learning something, right? So I would say when I approach situations and someone is ahead of me, right, I'm conscious to ask a really specific question and give them context about why I'm asking the question. So I wouldn't ask somebody like, hey, can you tell me about seed round investing? Like that's not a strong question, right? They're gonna be like, can you read a book? Like what, I don't know where to go with this. You don't give them enough to go on. If I ask them a question like, hey, a lot of our clients are actually in seed round investing. It's not an area I know a whole lot about. Here's something I know about it. Could you tell me specifically more about the Canadian landscape and how it varies from some of the deals you've done in Silicon Valley or that you've seen done in Silicon Valley? Like that's a question somebody can sink their teeth into. If it's somebody at the same level as me, again, I hate these terms, I just can't think of better ones on this particular topic. I then try to create some shared reality. I will say, from my perspective, this is what I'm experiencing, or this is what I know of this situation. Does that mirror your experience? I'd love to hear yours. And then if I'm with somebody who is needing information from me, right, or someone where I need to ask a favor of them, or I don't know what the case is, where that power differential is sort of in my favor, then I try to be conscious of the fact, one, that they may not be phrasing their question the way that I might with the language and the vocabulary that I have, and I tend to be a little bit more patient in those situations. So I think power is an important thing to think about, right? What is the power relationship? What is the power balance? And you can say all you want that it's fair or not fair, or like everybody's equal, and I agree on a human level, right? But when somebody is ahead of you, or somebody needs something, needs information from you because you're ahead of them, I think that does actually change the conversation. And to make it more effective, you do need to be communicating a little bit differently in each of those scenarios.
Yeah, no, I think that's incredibly important. And I would think I'll wrap this up just because I think we're running short for time, but I'd say there's three major things there's a lot of great value here tonight, but there's three major things that popped out. Number one, this is going to be really obvious, but relationships and people. In your transitions, your relationships and the ability to fall back on a good foundation is going to be critical to that journey, wherever it lands, wherever it goes. It's also that transitions are ongoing, right? So the folks up here talked about not just one, but multiple transitions in one way or another. So it's not just there's going to be multiple of them, but oftentimes it is an ongoing journey. And thinking of it like that is critical. And finally, this notion of, and again, this is my shtick, but it was mentioned in different ways, the importance of your foundation when it comes to your own compass, values, vision, what is most important to you, what are your own priorities, which will guide you through some of these questions and how you go about these things. So lots of incredible value here tonight. I want to thank these fantastic folks for such a great panel, and round of applause for the panel here tonight.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to the panel who are my friends. I really, did you guys get some value from these guys? It was great? Yeah, some really great value from this. And you know, these people are taking their time out of their day to come join you and share their knowledge. Please talk to them. Please send them some love and connect them outside on LinkedIn as well. You know, make sure you let them know that you appreciate what they're doing. A couple of quick announcements before we end. One is I want to thank our sponsors, our partners. So we have Women Biz Network with the resume, right? We have Kuso International, which is fantastic. We have the YMA Photo doing the headshots there. We have some really great partners and sponsors that help make these things happen for you guys and provide dinner and keep the cost low, which is really amazing, right? So that's an awesome thing. Over here we have a little selfie booth, a testimonial booth. So if you want to go there and just do a quick selfie and hashtag LinkedIn Local TO, or you want to share 30 seconds of why one of these people was amazing, they would love that too. So throw them some love and gratitude. We'd love for you to do that. If you're interested in joining DYPB or LinkedIn Locals, let us know. Just reach out to us. And we always have people helping on various things. There's a whole amazing team out there of volunteers as well as team members from the LinkedIn Local team, the DYPB team that are helping with this event. So please feel free to reach out and let us know. We also have these survey QR codes. So you may have noticed some QR codes. It's a survey for the event. We're trying to make these events better every single time. So that's why we need your help. And so if you fill out the survey, you'll be entered into a draw for 2 free passes for our next event. So make sure you please give us that survey feedback. And speaking of our next event is going to be on November 21st. That's going to be the next LinkedIn Local. They're every 2 months for the most part, but that's when the next event's going to be. So make sure you watch for it. We'll send you an email as well. And for those who have badges, please be sure to recycle the badges and put them in the back there. It's always good to reduce, recycle, and all that. And for those who want to keep networking, by all means, keep doing that. By all means, there's an after party, and we always go to Popper's Pub and just hang out for a drink and some food. You're welcome to join us. Everyone's welcome to join us. And in the meantime, I hope you got a lot out of today. And for me, the big thing I got was relationships matter. Yeah. Transition happens to everybody. Ask for help. Be vulnerable. Build a support network, and people will come to help you. And so that's why we do these LinkedIn Local events. That's why we do what we do. And that's why I love to do what I do, and all these amazing people. So thank you very much. Have a good night. Take care.
This way, please. At least for a photo, if not the full testimonials.
Packing up. Hope you enjoyed yourself. I'll see you guys next time for our next one tomorrow. Take care.